Right, so let me give you a little bit of an update where we are with this privileges issue, with the whole law of it, right? Because I know where we are with it now, right? And I mean, I've got some more committee reports to read and get hold of, but I probably don't need those. I've read enough to formulate a quite solid opinion now. And I've actually got two really cool reports that I'm really looking forward to reading for petitions, right? But we're talking about generally for the whole privileges for everyone now. So this is basically it, right? This is the whole thing, and then I'll do it up to the current situation. So Parliament's always been privileged, right? Probably even before William the Conqueror, right? In the Witten Parliament that they had, right? And it all evolves from parley. Whenever you have a war or a battle, the leaders go to talk and don't fight, right? So it wasn't actually called Parliament. It was William the Conqueror who decided to call it parley, right? He called together all the religious leaders, and also, but while he was, he was taking over he was fighting wars and battles in England, right? While I was taking over. So you have to have meetings with your opponents and so forth, but mainly with the landlords, right? But when they met for lawmaking and governance, they were meeting with the bishops, right? Because it was the religion over the whole country. Now, the members of the public anyone who goes to Parliament, right, is meant to be protected, because you're going there to talk, right, not to fight or be attacked, right? Now, when we started having Knights of the Shire to go to Parliament, obviously they've got to get there, okay? They've got to travel to the Parliament. But protection for law enforcement, or for, if you got hue and cry and various other things, you can get a warrant and so forth. All this, when you're engaging in local law enforcement, the public were engaged in it. So the public, if someone's committed a crime and then the public go after them, you've always been privileged to go and apprehend the criminal, right? And if you have any incidents while you're doing that, then it's all meant to be heard at the same time, okay? But when you go into Parliament, you are going into a different jurisdiction, and it is for the whole country, not for your local area, right? And this is the idea of being removed from accountability from the common law, from the jury in the local area, because you're going to Parliament, and if anything happens under that jurisdiction or through that jurisdiction, then you're accountable to the people who are in charge of that jurisdiction, right? Because that's where you're going, right? The whole point is that you're telling people what you're doing, or what you've been doing, supposedly, right? In order to proceed with proceedings. This is all based on the observance of due process of law, anyway, which is from 1368 or whenever. The observance of due process of law by original and matter of record, but to whom? To matter of record to the place that you are pursuing it with, right? Now, the basis is that you see all these local courts could petition the king or petition Parliament, right? But then when there isn't a Parliament, you've only got the local courts, but then you've got the King and Council. But the local courts are circuit to the King anyway, right? Because if the local courts judges misbehave, then you complain about them to the King. But if there's no Parliament called and it's not about a local issue, but a national issue, then you go to the King and Council anyway, right? Now, the thing is that if you're going to the King and Council with any issue, right, that's where it's to be judged, not in the local area, the local common pleas, right? So you're always removing yourself from common pleas when you're going to Parliament, right? Now, the thing is, the king you're protected, and it's always been protected. It's always been protected and of its own privileged jurisdiction. It doesn't matter whether you're elected or not, or whether you're a follower, or whether you're going to give evidence, or whether you are, bringing a cause. Because when they didn't call a Parliament and elect Knights of the Shire or MPs, then they weren't elected persons. Every citizen in their own right could bring a cause or case to the king, right, or through the courts. So it's all the same thing. It's not a matter of who you are. really. You see, it's a matter of whereabouts it's going to be heard. Now, the thing is that although people were protected from the common pleas when, you're going any matter to the Parliament or into the higher courts, the thing is that because you're not accountable to the public or the jury in the local area for that matter, it's going to the king, right? Then the king is obviously going to be the judge or Parliament. Now, the thing is that the king might have judged that, that this is when you were getting people prosecuted in, like, the Court of High Commission and so forth, like, Henry Burton and William Prynne and people like that, because of their religious opinions, right? But they weren't getting prosecuted by the common pleas in the local area. Let's get this right. They were bringing causes to the king or complaining to the king about the religion or whatever, not in the local area, to the king, right? There's got nothing to do with being accountable at common pleas to a jury. And the king, because he's the judge or adjudicator or whatever, he's judging that, not only that, that you can't have what you're asking for or he's not going to do it, but it's actually illegal. So he's actually prosecuting you, right? It's almost kind of like, can you imagine if you go, like if you go to a Crown Court and someone accuses you of attacking them, but then it turns out in the court that actually they attacked you, and then they get prosecuted, right? A little bit like that. You go to the king, you say, we want this religion changed, right? Or we want the religious practices modified because we don't like them anymore, or we don't believe in them, or whatever. And instead of the king going, okay, well, I'm going to do it, or I will do it, or I won't do it, then he said, actually, no, that's illegal. You're the one who's breaking the law by asking for it, right? So that's one of the bases behind the right to petition, that it's the right to petition the king and all prosecutions are illegal, but against you for bringing it, for trying it, right? But it's not only to say that, it's nothing to do with saying that, the petitioning is legal now. It's always been legal and existed, but it can't be turned around against you in the matter that you brought. But it was privileged and it was protected for the whole process, because that's what you're actually removing it from the local common pleas area, because it's going to Parliament and the king. Now, this is something which is probably the main issue at the moment. So, before the 1688 Bill of Rights is probably the most important part, right? We've got all these writs, because they're doing writs of privilege. Because, it's obvious that if you're doing a course to Parliament, then you're going to be protected and you're privileged. Now, it says that in all the writs. It says that, not only the knights who are attending Parliament, but also like the servants and the followers of the causes, right? Because you're following the cause. If you've got a cause, if you've got a case, then you're following the Parliament, because the Parliament's been called and people can therefore bring cases there, right? But if there isn't a Parliament, there's no Parliament to follow and attend, right? There's only witnesses attending there, but people bringing cases. It's like constituents going to see their MP and giving evidence and so forth. So it's kind of like anyone who's got anything to do with it. And this is why in Strode's Act it says freedom of speech to say anything concerning the Parliament. It's got nothing to do with being at, you don't have to be at Parliament. It's anything which is concerning it, because it doesn't concern the local courts. It doesn't concern the local courts, it concerns the Parliament, right? Now, this is Strode's Act. And they've got other Parliamentary Privileges Acts, which are all about protecting the elected knights so they can get to the Parliament and attend because they've been elected. So if they've been accused of any crimes in their own personal lives, it can wait. It's a postponement, right? It can wait for after. It's nothing to do with being, protected and not having to face crimes or whatever. It's about, because you've been elected to Parliament, you're going to go do what the people have asked you to do for them, and then, anything else can wait till afterwards, right? But then that's a different aspect of it than, like, the like a police officer going around and catching criminals, he's allowed to do certain things which might otherwise have been against the law. But anyone could do that was chasing a criminal if you get a warrant, right? Not just police, because back then, the public had to engage in that. So there's a lot of privileges in local law. But when you go to Parliament, then you've also got that jurisdiction so you can pursue what you're doing in order to bring a case, not unlike if it's in the local area under common pleas, right? And also MPs going about getting evidence or investigating things and so forth, right? But the 5 Parliamentary Privileges Acts are mainly about the inconvenience of... You see, people were also bringing lots of civil causes and civil cases, and they could use it to... a lot of people, was bringing civil claims and getting warrants against people, which could really be a pain, and end up like getting them locked up because they owe them money or whatever. But you don't want that to happen to your MP when they're supposed to be in Parliament, right? Someone going and saying they owe them some money. But the thing is that these privileges, so they existed, but they were getting abused because, a lot of MPs did owe people money. And they were kind of like evading it or getting out of it, or even using the privilege as an excuse why they can, buy things on the tick and not pay for them, and then use the parliamentary privilege to evade it for a while at least, and the Lords. So there's a lot of... The problem is that there was a lot of corruption and a lot of abuse of these privileges, right? So a lot of them were using it to get out of, things like property and land and all kinds of different things, even like, inheritance, paying brothers and sisters money and all different things like that. But it existed and it was important and they needed it, particularly when you got the death penalty and things like that. Now, it existed for followers of causes, not just elected knights of the Shire. You need to get your head around this, right? It existed for followers of causes. If they were following the Parliament or being called for evidence, or if they were bringing a case themselves through their MP or to the Parliament, right? That's like the right to petition. Well, it is. And it was by writ, because obviously if you have got a petition, it is a matter of original writ or matter of record, right? That's what it actually is. But if someone didn't recognise that when you get it out and show them it, then, you might have needed, some sort of backup or enforcement. I mean, whenever there's a criminal or a crime, you write out a complaint, but then it has to be warranted, so they can go after him. When you write out a petition, right, obviously you're going to go and give the evidence, but if you end up, getting prosecuted or whatever, and they didn't actually accept that, then you need to get the writ or warrant to release you, because, if you're doing it for these civil messy processes, right? Now that's, if you're doing it, you're doing it. If you're not, you're not, right? Now that's completely different to if you've done something in your own personal life which wasn't for Parliament, then, you weren't doing it for Parliament, so there's no protection. But if you were being called to Parliament and serving, then that privilege allowed them to postpone it until to be dealt with afterwards, so it didn't interrupt the parliamentary procedures and attendance, right? Now, so MPs, if you are elected to serve in Parliament, right, it's all sorted out through, they already had it sorted out in acts of law, right? It was all established, right? Now, this is the thing. They've got these Parliamentary Privileges Acts, so MPs don't really need the 1688 Bill of Rights, okay? And we didn't really, because we could get writs. You could get a writ from your MP or Parliament, right, if you're doing a petition. But the petition is the writ, because if you got the petition or you don't, right, if you're doing it or you aren't, right? Now, the thing with the 1688 Bill of Rights is, so some people were getting prosecuted for bringing cases that ended up getting turned back around against them, but mainly by the king. Not in the local areas, right? Because it's been removed from the local areas, right? But the king's, because he thought he had the right to judge the case and not the local areas, then, but also he might decide that he might turn it back around on the people, right? Which, it's almost like, if you bring a case and then it gets turned around against you, sort of thing. how often do Crown prosecutors end up bringing a case and then they get prosecuted? That's the whole point, the whole thing. That's what I'm trying to say, How often do a police go after criminals and then it gets turned around against them, right? Rarely. I mean, occasionally it does, false arrest or whatever, but not very often. That's more like the situation what was going on with the king type of thing, right? So just a minute, you bringing this claim against me, want to get this law changed on religion, but actually, no, I think that, that's illegal. You can't do it because I say, right? This is the thing. But so now the 1688 Bill of Rights put a stop to that. And the brilliant thing about the 1688 Bill of Rights is our right to petition is in there as well. All prosecutions are illegal. Why? Because if that's what you're doing, then we know you're doing it. And you weren't supposed to be prosecuted for when you were doing things for those purposes, right? Just like MPs aren't supposed to be prosecuted for when they're doing things for Parliament, right? But MPs did have some protection when they weren't doing things for Parliament, so it could be postponed. Whereas if you're not doing a petition and you're not following the Parliament or bringing a petition case, then you're not protected, right? And there is no postponement. But if it is for the petition, then you are protected and it is privileged, right? Now, this is the thing. This is the amazing, ironic thing. Now, modern politicians, modern MPs, right? What have they been up to? What have they been busybodying themselves with, right? Is that the 1688 Bill of Rights is so brilliant for us, right? For us, for you and me. But it wasn't, if that's what you were doing before then, that's what you were doing because it still existed before then, right? But it's so brilliant for us. It's such a great clause that it just helps to clarify it, right? But then the thing is, what's happening now is that, the MPs had privileges. They had privileges in their own life and obviously if they were doing things for parliamentary purposes. So it was already good for them when, they tell the truth and, what they're doing is what they're doing. What they say that they're doing is what they're doing, right? It was good for them while they were doing things for Parliament and it gave them a benefit when they were in their own life because it could be postponed, right? But some of them were abusing it in the civil aspect. But in the 1689 Claim of Right Act, it says that you can't use protections to evade personal debts, right? So you weren't supposed to be using it to evade personal debts. Now that was way, way before all this 1800s abolishment of arrest on civil process. It was way, way, way before then. Because you've got loads. If you read all the petitions from the House of Lords, there are all kinds of things like, the King's hat maker, bought a hat and he wouldn't pay for the hat, and then someone's trying to get the money off him, but he was using privilege to get out of paying for a hat. All kinds of ridiculous stuff, right? So they were all abusing it. A lot of them were abusing it. Not every single one of them, but this moon, well, you pronounce it moon, but it's spelt like Mohan, but it was called Moon, right? This Baron, he was writing out writs of privileges for every Tom, Dick and Harry and abusing it himself and all kinds of stuff. Got into trouble with the House of Lords, for example. That's just one example, right? Then you've got that Lord Stafford, who had an entertainment company and all these, actors and, acrobats and musicians and that, and they got into a bit of trouble because they were his staff, they were passing off as his servants, but they were going around and getting into mischief and trouble, going around almost like some kind of circus or fairground, probably might have been, I don't know if they were picking pockets or ripping people off, I don't know, but that type of thing, So Lord Stafford had this travelling racket or band or whatever, things like that. There are all kinds of different things. But anyway, now this is the thing, right? Those Parliamentary Privileges Acts are brilliant, right? Because it's law. It's actually law. Privileges are kind of like set in law and codified. So the MPs don't really need the 1688 Bill of Rights, Article 9. Because, if you're elected MP, and when you're doing something for Parliament purposes, like some kind of investigation or inquiry, then either you're doing it or you aren't, right? Now, this is what's happened, but that act is brilliant for us as well. The thing is, right, if you're doing something for a petition, then either you are or you aren't. Now, if you are, then you can't be prosecuted because that's what it is. But if you're not doing it for that, then you don't get any protection like, to postpone or delay anything else. really, but the MPs did. Now, the thing is that there is some jealousy with the MPs because it's so explicit is the right to petition that they're kind of jealous of it, even though they've got their own privileges and they've got their own rights and everything like that, right? Now, what's happened is they don't really want to acknowledge or like our right to petition anymore, particularly after sort of like, I'd say, getting into the sort of early 1900s and then the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s. By the time you get to 1980, it's like they're really trying to get people to forget about it, right, and replace it with like the Public Order Act and so forth. But yet it still exists, right? But the thing is this: now, at the moment, since 2008, 2012, or whatever, what we've got are these privileges committees in Parliament, right? Now, what they're doing is they're doing this like double blind thing. And it's quite devious, actually. What they're doing is they're making a massive hoo-ha, right? A huge, huge hoo-ha over the moon, right? About the 1688 Bill of Rights, but not our right to petition, right? It gets a big thumbs down, right? Boo, they're booing it. So instead, to kind of draw attention or cast attention or try and outdo our, even though they don't need to, right? Just for a big spoiler, right? For a massive spoiler, right? Just to take a big steaming dump on us, right? They're making a huge hoo-ha about the 1688 Bill of Rights, but they're Article 9. Right? So they never show up about it. Article 9, Article 9, Article 9, Article 9. It's almost like they're doing a mantra of Article 9, so to try and, forget about, or, it's almost kind of like, if there's a brilliant thing, sort of like, can you imagine if you're going to like, a fairground or circus and there's a brilliant thing and everyone wants to crowd around it or look at it, right? But they're like, no, look at that. Come over here. So they're like, no, pay no attention to that, right to petition. Come over here to Article 9, illegal prosecutions for matters cognisable, decidable only in Parliament. But because it's so kind of like weird and arcane, and it's not actually, it doesn't even sound anywhere as good as ours. It hasn't even got the panache of ours, right? They won't even say what that Article 9 is. They've in fact replaced it with a Erskine May comment. Whenever they mention it, they give you this. They come out with this Erskine May comment as if that is the law because it sounds better and it looks cooler. And so they're doing this Erskine May skit, right? Whenever it's Article 9, so that they're trying to make out that Erskine May's comment is Article 9, right? Because it sounds better. Right, it's trying to make it, in fact, sound better than our right to petition, right? To outdo it, really, it's almost like a competition to outdo our right to petition, even though they don't even need that Article 9 because they don't really. It's written like by illegal and diverse courses, and it kind of makes them sound a bit sketchy, or that there is something a bit sketchy going on. But well, yeah, there is them, right? Usually evil ministers, councillors, and judges, right? And so instead, so they've kind of like superimposed this Erskine May comment over it, right? And what they're doing is they're kind of they're dancing around it and shouting and going, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. But they've covered it up. They like put a cover over it, so it's not like cognisable only in Parliament and diverse arbitrary courses, right? Because it sounds a bit naff, right? So instead they've put this cover over it, this Erskine May cover, and they're all dancing around it going, look at this, look at this, look at this, it's brilliant, right? And yours is rubbish, like, not paying attention to that, right? But they didn't need to do that, because they got all these they got like 5 Parliamentary Privileges Acts, right? Which were completely sufficient. Now, this is the thing. They don't like the fact that we don't need to be elected, right? We don't have to be elected in order to take up the right to petition and follow causes of Parliament and bring matters and be as privileged as they are. They don't like that because to them that's kind of like they don't think we deserve the privilege, right? But yet we've always had it, right? Because we're going to have it by writ. And so they hate it. And then they try to forget about it. But this is the thing. So instead, they've done this big hoo-ha about Parliament. So if it is for matters of Parliament or doing something for Parliament, then it obviously is protected for them, right? Okay, well, there's no doubt about it. But they like to be the ones who decide, what is and what isn't protected and who's doing who and what. So in Parliament, you've got a lot of different ministers, and there are some ministers who are a bit more stupid and ones who are a bit more cleverer, right? And so forth. Now, the amazing thing about their Privileges Acts is that even if they're knocking around out and about in their own personal private life, they've got some kind of protection, at least postponement, so they can attend and do Parliament, right? But they would have really liked, they really, really probably would like ultimate protection, but they know that they shouldn't have it. So morals take over, and they're always talking each other down that, it shouldn't encourage criminality and, this and that, and they shouldn't abuse it, right? Which obviously it was heavily abused, right? It was heavily abused in the past, but not always by like you and me, Joe Blogs Public, who are doing petitions, actually by full-blown lords, full-blown barons, members of Parliament and their servants, extravagantly abusing it, to do with estates of houses, servants, debts, lands, all ridiculously, extravagantly abused, right? Not just like, cutting down a few ULEZ cameras because we got a grievance or whatever. I'm not saying that I've done that because I'm not in London, but, just like that's an example of the ULEZ campaign, right? Or, putting up banners outside the Labour Party headquarters or putting adverts in the streets or whatever it is that you're doing, right? Things like that. Angela Ditchfield painting on... spray paint on a council building, public property, by the way, not private property or whatever they're doing, Gail Bradbrook stunts at the... in fact, that Gail Bradbrook stunt on the top of the Horse Ferry Road thing, the Department of Transport, that was a publicity stunt for publicity for a cause, right? So, now... I don't think any members of the public have abused it because they won't even let us have it, right? Obviously, they're not even really letting us have the privilege now, or we're meant to have it, but they're not letting us have it anywhere near that what we're meant to have in it. And they've got the police arresting people illegally, and they're bigging the police up like they've got all these powers that they don't actually have because the police are acting completely and totally criminally, right? Now, the thing is that, obviously, Parliament, so they got this moral issue about their own members doing things in their own life. But the thing is, so they're talking it down and they're not being completely honest about the protections for that part of it. But they've definitely got the protections for when Parliament is, when you're actually using it. So that's why they're going on about this Article 9, because, when you're using it for Parliament, oh yes, we need it, we must have it, right? But then, they're talking it down with their members about in their own personal private lives, right? Because obviously they don't want to encourage criminality, but it was never total complete protection anyway. But the thing is that they're the elected ones and we aren't. And in a way, right, it's like, they're the ones who are elected and they're the ones who've got protection automatically because, they're always doing things for Parliament when they are, right? And, when they're not doing things for Parliament, then they shouldn't be committing crime, so we shouldn't encourage it. But yet they're meant to have the protection, right? Or some kind of sort of protection that is at least a postponement, right? And there's some bitterness or issue between the fact that the moral of Parliament is to not encourage criminality or law breaking and to talk it down, but yet that, in doing that, they're not strongly advocating and upholding their own privilege from those other 5 acts, which they're meant to have, right? But they don't really necessarily need those because, obviously, you're going to commit crime anyway, but they've got this thing that's so strong for Article 9, right, that it doesn't matter. But the thing is that the viewpoint of us possibly being able to take up the right and have such a powerful and strong thing, which is all prosecutions are illegal, when that is definitely what you're doing. And if you're not, then, you don't have that, and you're not doing that, and you aren't protected, right? But the fact that it exists and we can have it, and it's such amazing and brilliant, right, that there's a little bit of bitterness on the morals of that. Like, they just can't handle the fact that, we can take up the right and do certain things, and we can sort of, in a way, kind of direct, and we've got some creative license for it, right? That they just can't handle that fact that we have got some poetic license with it, and we're not elected, but that's what it is, whether you like it or not. And they can't reconcile that with the fact that within Parliament, they like the privilege of when they're doing things for Parliament, and they love it because obviously when you're doing that, that's what you're doing, which is what we're supposed to have when we're doing the petitioning. Because if you're not, you're not. If you are, you are, right? If you are, or you aren't, right? But you're not full time like they are elected, right? But they can't reconcile the fact that we've got something that we can pick up and use if we choose, with the fact that they are meant to have some protection in their own normal life knocking around, at least postponement, and it's actually not, it isn't complete and total privilege and total protection. It's only postponement, so it's good, but it's not that good, and they're talking each other down and discouraging it anyway, that aspect of it, to the fact where they don't even want to. They don't like the fact that we can take up the right to petition and we're totally protected, and we are protected from things that otherwise would be illegal on the criminal aspect. But if you're doing it for the petition and have to or want to do it, like a police officer kicking a door down or whatever it is, putting banners up in the streets or painting something on a wall, that it is not criminal because grievances aren't crimes, right? And they can't reconcile that, and they can't take it, they can't accept it, right? Because it involves criminality, and their protection for criminality for when it's something that they want to do isn't absolute, right? But they shouldn't be doing crime anyway, but if they did, they're not supposed to be being prosecuted. So the thing is that, the irony is that if you have got a political cause and you really want to pursue it, and there are certain things that you have to do which can fall under it, you can be protected from certain criminal things, and that's pretty cool. It's pretty good and brilliant to reach an objective, right? And they can't reconcile that privilege, that brilliantness of the right to petition, but when you are doing something, it's something that you care about a lot and you want to pursue, not like a hobby, like I want to go golfing or I want to go swimming or I want to go, scuba diving or I want to go this, but if it means a lot to you and you really want to do it and it's important, let's say that, and it gives you this power to do something that you really want to do, like stop the government doing this or stop the government doing that or this or that, and you get protection, it's like they're jealous of it in a way because you're doing something that you really, really, really want to do. Now, no one should break the law, right? But MPs, they're protected when they're doing something from Parliament, and when they're elected, that's a job, right? Now, in their own private life, when they're doing things that they really want to do, like going out getting drunk or this or that, or, Patrick spends in some kind of brothel or God knows what, Soho bar or whatever he's up to or whatever, and Dan Norris, and then they're enjoying themselves doing something they want to do, they're not protected. Like, if they're having fun in a bar or a pub and they accidentally get into trouble, but, you don't know if they meant it or not, but it just, these things happen, sometimes people get into trouble when they don't mean to, it's just, an accident or God knows or whatever, or a misfortune, like, Mike Amesbury's out having a couple of pints, enjoying himself with his friends, something he wants to do, but he ends up, someone insults him and he punches them out because he's drunk, but that's his night out, he's having a laugh. He apparently doesn't get proper protection. So they're not getting protection when things happen to them, when they're out doing something that they might like and enjoy, right? But we're out doing some things that we might want to do or like doing when you're doing the right to petition and you got full protection. But the thing is that MPs are meant to have a postponement so it doesn't interfere with their attendance to Parliament or affect them too much until the sessions are over or in between and so forth, right? Or at least they can attend or not have to be arrested, which is that's privilege, it's pride, you don't have to be arrested by a police officer. You can say, no, I'm a member of Parliament, don't arrest me. Now, maybe they think that privilege is a bit rubbish and it should be better, some of them, but maybe most of them think that, none of the MPs should be doing any behaviour or conduct like that, so they're talking it down. So it's always been talked, that aspect of it is played down, to the point where if they acknowledge it has some sort of delay or postponement on the criminality aspect of it, it is kind of reinforcing or advocating our justification or right for having the criminal aspect for it, if it's something that you're doing, because it exists, right? So what they've chosen to do is kind of like shun that aspect absolutely and completely to the point where they don't even want to mention those 5 acts for themselves, and they're not even standing up for other MPs at all if they get into trouble in their own life. But when it comes to Parliament, oh no, this is for Parliament. We've got to have the protections and privileges when it's for Parliament. Yes, let's talk about that. So this is why they're dancing around this Article 9 going, woo, isn't this great? Oh, well, it's actually diverse evil causes and so forth, blah, blah, blah. That part as well. Oh, no, we don't like that part. It doesn't sound cool. It's better if we just cover it up and make it sound like better than yours because you don't have one. Ha ha, you don't have a right and privilege now. Ha ha, look at this, ours is great. So they've got problems and issues with it, mainly because they don't really want us to have that amount of power, but that's what it is, right? Which they've got. And this kind of like reconciliation of their own behaviour, and then because they're kind of talked it down so much and they don't want to encourage us with our right, they've ended up where they're even, they're sacrificing MPs, none of them are, right, you can't, we can't have the right to petition protection, and MPs can't have their postponement of their, proceedings if they get into trouble, right? And they're only going to have it if it is, for Parliament proceedings, right? And so therefore, they've misled each other, lied to each other, and the naive MPs who are not spending the time looking into it because they're too busy, right, have ended up being misled by some of the staff and clerks of Parliament who are kind of jealous about the elected MPs, pretending that they're, standing up for, the truth and what is right, but they're not. They've got a bit of business as well. So it's all kind of like, and then you've got, they're just not telling you the whole truth. So it's human. It's human nature. It's a mixture of human nature, misinformation. The standards have gone down a lot in intelligence since, just like as health suffered since, the 1800s. Similarly to how the health has suffered, the intelligence and being informed about it part has suffered. So that's kind of where we are with it now. And they bloody well don't like the fact that, that there are these rights because, they're very powerful. We put these people into the government and ultimately we can take them out of the government. And it even says that, I've got 2 quotes at the moment which clearly states that, petitioning is to remove evil ministers and to settle grievances or maladministration in government. They won't let you run those any petitions because they're saying that, it makes MPs look bad, this looks good, this looks good, this looks good, this looks good. They don't want to look bad. And because they've got party affiliations, it rubs off on the party. if anyone, but only the police can do it though. You know, if the police do it, if the police say that they've been naughty, then they must have been naughty, but not the public. Well, just a minute, the police didn't put you in Parliament. The public put you in Parliament. It's like, oh, the public can put us in Parliament, but we don't want to let those grubby public people pull us back out again. But no, that's the point. It's not under the local common law jurisdiction of a police officer. It's under the jurisdiction of Parliament. Therefore, we put the complaint to Parliament, we collect the signatures from the public to Parliament, and then it will be meant to be judged in Parliament. But they don't even want to judge it. And they're pushing for more and more police and court powers to judge MPs when they've been naughty, but yet they don't want to push for more and more powers for the public to judge them when they've been naughty. In fact, they're trying to block it. So I don't get it. When there's Gordon Brown say, no, you can only be a High Court judge if you've spent so much time as a judge and you've got experience and you've been indoctrinated like, Leveson, and you're kind of like part of the establishment like Keir Starmer, part of the cabinet, part of the doors and shutters and windows and, whatever. The public can't trust the public. Well, just a minute. You trust the public to vote you in, but then you don't want us, to pull it back out again. Which is disgusting. It's like, oh yeah, they want our votes when they get them in, but they don't want to listen to our opinion when we want to get them back out again. So it's very one way, and it's disrespectful to the power of the electorate. Like Keir Starmer did call off local elections, which is disgusting, absolutely disgusting behaviour, calling off local elections. How dare he? And then there's the Electoral Commission saying, "Oh, how can we encourage kids to vote? Fine them. Just absolutely ridiculous." So, these people, they don't really have. Well, they try to pass off that they've got all these morals, but it's in our language. I'm reading these reports, these committee reports, and they're so neat and prim. It's all like it's all for a good cause, but no, but you're lying. It's Mr. Sweetman. Hello, Mr. Sweetman. It's just despicable. They kind of like well, the words charlatan, they're called charlatans, aren't they? There's a band called the Charlatans. They are charlatans, it's a word, it exists, the charlatans, it's like, oh, aren't we the, little post office lady, Rachel Reeves, Keir Starmer, he's worked at the CPS. Yeah, well, the CPS are leaving out evidence that could, CPS aren't disclosing evidence which could undermine their case, they're criminal, they're crooked, they're in cleaning out. This is the thing. These people are charlatans. They hide things behind their back. They don't say, oh, well, it's all for a good cause. It's best if you don't know this or that. No, but you're saying that you want more transparency, The e-petitions has gone full on opaque now. They're writing in these privileges reports. So we need more transparency, right? But you're making e-petitions more opaque. We don't want to see these petitions we rejected. Now, when you sign the petition, you can't even see what it's about, until you've got your first 5 signatures. And then you don't even want to see the URL. You can't even see the address, what the URL is to click on. And half the time it doesn't work. It goes to the wrong page. And they don't want people to know who signed their petitions. You can't even know what name signed it now. You're not allowed to see the email addresses. So freedom of information is a lie. They don't want you to know anything, but there's a reason for that. So why are you saying you need transparency then? Don't lie. Don't say, oh, we're all for transparency. You're not for transparency. Do not say that you're bloody for transparency. You're not for transparency at all. Don't freaking lie to me, right? There's 5 Privileges Acts that never got mentioned once in the entire 2012 freaking entire report. Or in the Clerk of the Parliaments. They didn't want to freaking mention them, right? So don't tell me about misleading people. Whatever your intentions are, right? That is being a charlatan. Doesn't matter what your accent is, what qualifications you've got. If you come out of the backside of the, Natural History Museum, or if you've just walked down, Lavender Street or whatever, right? It is lying, right? It doesn't matter if you're a man, woman, fat, thin, tall, short, wearing a white pair of gloves or smelling of, lavender, right? You're a liar. You're a liar. This is the thing. And this is the problem now with Parliament. And it's all to do with what they want you to believe and know. Why? Because then you have a saying things and effect. And that's, we're asking questions, Let's ask the public some questions. We want feedback, right? Well, yeah, you want feedback after you have not told us the entire truth, right? Hey, give us some feedback on this article that we completely misled you on and not filled you in with the truth. Well, we're just testing you. We're just testing you, Let's give the public a little test now and, see what they know. We'll leave a few bits out and we'll see if they manage to, catch us out on that one or no. It's, we left out, we left out, didn't you? No, actually, if you keep doing that, you did that in 2008, 2010, 2012, look, there's no public are calling us out on that. I think they've forgotten about it. Yeah, we can cross that off the list now. They've definitely forgotten about it. Just give them a little test, see if they remember it. No, they just test the water a bit. Yes, it's definitely forgotten about it now. Mike Amesbury's forgotten about it. Patrick Spencer's forgotten about it. Dan Norris has forgotten about it. This is the thing. These MPs can't even stand up for themselves. And in a way, they, it's like a belief system. The other MPs get them to believe. Believe we're believers. You have got no rights at all. You haven't got no rights, Dan Norris. None. Patrick Spence. None. Mike Amesbury. No rights. This is the thing about the believers. We believe. This is the thing about believing those 5 parliamentary privileges. Why don't you try believing in the 5 parliamentary privileges acts? This is the thing. So this is where I am with it now. It's just it's just a joke. It is actually a joke now. It's a charlatan charade game.